Talk with Wes. Uh, you are live with me if you're on Facebook and YouTube. YouTube. That sounds like a person not of the YouTube generation. But indeed, I do use YouTube or YouTube. Welcome to Career Talk with Wes. I'm also doing the green room version with you right now. If you're familiar with the show, you know Facebook and YouTube go live before LinkedIn does. I do think I've solved part of that problem today. At least when it goes live, it'll just go live, and that'll be in about maybe about 15 seconds. That's LinkedIn. And when LinkedIn joins us, we'll be live on all three platforms, and then I'll officially start the show. So if you have a beverage, sip your beverage. Okay, welcome everyone to Career Talk with Wes, live with you again. Every day I do the show weekdays at noon Eastern. Uh, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube live here every day, like I said. The show Career Talk with Wes is about all things career, but it's always from the perspective of that I do my work from as a career coach and consultant, and that is with a central focus on building awareness. And when I say building awareness, I mean self-awareness, awareness of others, awareness of the chess pieces on the board, as I like to say. If we build our awareness to deeper levels, especially when we're talking about moving below the conscious level, this is when we can really start to know what the obstacles actually are to us succeeding or going where we're trying to go. And that's how I do the work I do, and that's how I run this show. And this is the purpose of the show. And it also has a purpose of being here live every day for people to have a resource, whether they're working with me or not, or whether they're working with someone who can work with them on these areas or not. I mean this to be a free resources where you can at least have a conversation like this. And you can chat with me as well. If you're watching me live, you can put any kind of comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, or ideas or critiques in the comment section, and I'll respond to them. Or if you're watching on demand, do the same. Happy to accommodate those responses as well later. Um, I want to announce that I'm super, super excited. I'm going to keep talking about this for a while. I just launched, let's try that again. I just launched the Career Talk with Wes podcast. And so now that is live on just about all your favorite podcast platforms, if not all your favorites. And if not, it will be soon as I add more and more platforms. Very excited about that because I can bring the show to another audience. That's the audio only version. And I do think that's a different audience. I grew up with talk radio, which is what my driver was to bring the show to that kind of environment. And podcasts really do fulfill that these days. What's interesting today is I'm talking in my opening here about some generational things, or at least that's what's on my mind, because today's topic is going to be something in the area of generation gaps, and how they might affect career elements or working in our career. So that's going to be today's topic. I'm going to be more specific about that in a second here. Just want to make sure I covered all the upfront items. I believe I did. So I'm going to go on to today's topic. Today, I want to talk about something specific that was suggested to me by a friend of mine, a long time friend. Speaking of generations, we're of the Generation X, I don't know what to call it. We're of Generation X. And so and we're probably on the high. I know I'm on the higher side of Generation X, and she might be a little on. She's a little lower on the top end there of Generation X. And the question she had, as she's been listening to the show and thinking about topics, which is I invite you to do, she was discussing the idea of. In her case, she works with a team, and the team is mostly made up of millennials. And so you've got the millennial and the Generation X gap, which, is it's an interesting thing to talk about because if you really try to nail it down, and I think on this front, I will say as someone in Generation X that I believe the millennial generation, especially say pre-COVID, got really unfairly categorized in many, many ways. And I think every younger generation to some degree does get unfairly categorized because the viewpoint is from an older generation or a more experienced generation or a generation that has seen life through a different lens. And when we all form and we grow up and we're born whatever year we're born in, and then we formulate the world through our lens. And most of what we formulate in those earlier years, that's your childhood through your early teens and then your teens, and then even your 20s. This is all formation period of essentially a foundation, right? Everything that you learn after that will be stacked on top of it, but viewed through that lens, through that generational lens that you experienced. So I grew up in the 70s for the most part, and so that has given me a certain lens, so incredibly different than the millennials lens growing up with you know, a completely different lens. Just age of the cell phone comes much younger. Um, it's just so different that this is the kind of thing that I want to talk about today in response to my friend's suggestion, and her question in particular was, how does one manage a performance review, for instance, and specifically if you're managing a performance review, your Generation X, you're the older generation, you're managing a performance review for a younger generation. And one of the things that you might tend or need to or want to, or even be instructed to do with a performance review is to seek out a, um, a perspective from that younger generation for the future, the farther future. So let's call short term maybe what they're going to do in the next year, right? They just got through a year. If it's an annual performance review, they just got through a year. And so they're looking at the next year, short term. But then you start to think longer term, especially if you're in an older generation, you start to think about 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 to 15 years or longevity in the organization, right? Or even if it's viewed as in a holistic way by a manager, say a millennial is a manager, and they're not only looking out for what this person in the millennial generation can do for the organization in longer term years, um, but for themselves, just trying to help them navigate their career. Hopefully that's the a holistic. Hopefully that's the kind of thing that's happening in a workplace. Is the workplace is considering your entire life, not just your career, or not just your career with the organization. Let's put it that way. So that said, she really wasn't identifying a problem. She was more identifying a challenge. In that area, what I understood her challenge to be was bringing her perspective of longer term thinking to a performance review and trying to help that someone in the younger generation see that same perspective. And we didn't talk a lot about it, so I'm going. This is my premise. Hopefully, she'll let me know if I was on or off target here. But where this made me think, or the space that I went to was two things. The first word that came to me that I think is the key to all of it is curiosity. That if either party goes into a performance review curious, truly curious, where the true curiosity is, I don't know everything. I would like to learn. I am here to find out more. I'm going to put my presumptions aside. I'm going to speak of what I perceive and share it with you, but I won't speak of it as fact necessarily, meaning my perspective is my perspective. It's not necessarily yours. So if I'm the manager, and I did serve in a capacity in my career as a manager of a team of millennials, and I was Generation X, of course. And and in doing so, I saw some of those challenges of my perspective not matching theirs. And I could bark at them, right? I could say, "Don't you see this?" Or, me looking through my lens, doesn't it look this way to you? No, it doesn't. They're not looking through the same lens. I'm not looking through their lens. I don't know what the world looks like from their lens. They don't know what the world looks like through my lens because it's just impossible. You can talk about that for years and you still wouldn't quite get it. You have to live in that generation to know what's meaningful, what isn't, what's important, what's not, priorities, core values. I mean, you can't dictate any of these things to another person. So the first word I want to bring to the table is curiosity. And when it comes to curiosity, I could sit here and encourage you, my friend who is Generation X, to bring curiosity. I could encourage her team if I knew them, but I don't, to come to the table with lots of curiosity. But we can't make others do that. So if you're in the situation where you're one of these parties, either the one receiving a performance evaluation from a supervisor in another generation or from another generation, or the other way around, you can't extract curiosity from someone. You can't. You can try to spark curiosity. You can try to evoke curiosity, and that's essentially, I think, what I ultimately like to talk about here is to, since I feel curiosity is key here because of what I said before, coming in open-minded in that place where it says, I'm here to learn. Let's learn about each other first. Let's see if we can absorb each other's perspectives, do our best to understand them, and then discuss what may be important from both perspectives. How can we both get our needs met? How can we agree on what is shared understanding? Let's not presume what shared understanding is, right? I think the world's flat and you seem to think it's round for some reason. And so if I come in with this idea that really once you come to your senses, you'll realize the world's flat, we're not going to get anywhere. And same with for you. If you come into this conversation saying sooner or later he'll figure out the world's round, we're not going to get anywhere. There has to be an acceptance of those differences. So while I was thinking about this as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how I would be presenting it and talking through it. And I was thinking to myself, there's going to be a viewpoint that says, let's not do that thing that we did with gender many years ago. There was that book that said, uh, I don't even remember which is which, but men and women are either from Venus or Mars, but they're not from the same planet. And there's some people who did not like that angle because it said, oh, wait a minute, we didn't grow up on different planets. Let's not go crazy with this. And I agree with that. We don't want to try to create such a case where our differences are bigger than they actually are. But while we didn't grow up on different planets, different generations, I almost want to say it's an awful lot like growing up on a different planet because the planet changes so much over 15 years, 20 years. The culture changes so drastically. Technology advancement, norms, cultural norms, family norms, norms with society all change so drastically. It almost is like another planet, but it's not. So if you're on that side of the fence thinking, let's not do the different planet thing, I'm with you. But let's at least acknowledge there are differences, and they are differences between generations to the degree that it will take curiosity to find wherever the meeting in the middle place is. There's no way to come in and say your norms need to meet my norms. Your norms need to be my norms. Here's the big hang up with um, this whole problem I'm putting on the table today. That the hang up I want to make sure I always talk about whenever I'm talking about this relationship, and you'll notice I've many times, if you've watched the show, I've talked about this many times, the authoritative based, the relationship that is based on authority, or at least has an authority component in it, a vertical relationship, a supervisor and a supervisee, right? It means there's a manager and a managee, and there is hopefully a two-way process going on here, up and down. The manager managing downward, only downward because of authority. It'd be much better if we thought about flipping it horizontally, so then we wouldn't think about rank so much. We would just think about the manager has one job that's different than the managee has, and they're different jobs. And the idea is one person's job comes with the responsibility of managing the other person's job, and the other person doesn't technically have that. Let me flip this back again. Uh, what I always like to suggest is the managee or the supervisee does have an invisible job called managing up. And it's not often talked about, but if you become fully aware of that, your manager is managing downward, your employee, whether they realize it or not, are managing upward. They're managing their reputation, they're managing expectations. They're sending signals about what to expect. They're sending signals about where the boundaries are. Both are doing this, but it's always more visible that a manager is setting boundaries and sending messaging and setting parameters and expectations and judgments and criticism and all those things downward. Those seem obvious. It's not as obvious that those are being managed upward. We all look upward to that supervisor, whoever that is in our world, and we either consciously manage that relationship so that expectations are clear, so that boundaries are clear, so that needs, wants are clear and they're expressed directly, so that understanding is clear, communications are clear. That requires both. And so one thing I'll always try to bring into it, I'm bringing into this situation now, two different generations. Let's, in this case, we'll say Generation X Generation X managing the millennial generation. And the authority is in the hands, in this case, certainly we could talk about it the other way around, but today I'll stick with the authority is with the Generation X uh, manager, and the one is subject to that authority is the millennial. And I want to introduce for all listening that concept, managing up. That needs to be a conscious, fully aware. Speaking of awareness, uh, this is critical for you can't do this without some level of awareness that this dynamic exists. So if you want to maximize the dynamic of being the supervisee to your supervisor, if you want to manage your or maximize your empowerment, if you will, your ability and to get what it is you need and want, and to give your manager what they need and want, you need to become aware of the fact that the responsibility you own, whether you've noticed it or not, is to manage up and to do it very much intentionally. I'll leave that alone for now because that it really can be its own discussion for a very long time. So recognizing the dynamics there, back to curiosity. You can't force curiosity on someone. It's got to be that one person brings it in and that person decides to think about what they can do to spark curiosity in the other. Now, I'll ask you that question. I'll just ask you if you're either my friend in the managerial spot in that conversation or that dynamic, I'll ask her what might spark curiosity in that millennial group you're managing. What might spark their curiosity to want to find out more about your perspective, to see if they can try that hat on, to see if it fits, to see if they can take it in, if they can make it, does it fit in their world? Is it even something they can conceive of, given that their world likely looks completely different from their perspective? Um, so I would say that. What can you do to spark curiosity? I would say just coming in curious, meaning I've let's have a conversation and I don't have presumptions. I'm here to find out if what I believe to be true is something you believe to be true, or if we agree on things, or if our perspectives are similar, or how different are they. Coming in open like that, curious, that can spark curiosity in the other side, because the way to spark curiosity, this is the only one I'll give you for today, so we don't go too deep into this. One way to spark curiosity, coming in open the way I just talked about, is designed to do something. And the something that it does is it helps someone to put their defenses down. You can't really engage with someone effectively or in a meaningful way if they've got their guard up. And we've already got the authority relationship issue to deal with, because authority in and of itself can spawn defensiveness in others or evoke defensive response. Because of them or because of the nature of it or because of both, whatever it is, you already have to overcome that. Authority, not recognized for what it is, can cause a lot of defensiveness, from that other side that's being managed. So in order to get to encourage someone to put their guard down, we don't do that by asking them to put their guard down or telling them. There's zero room for telling, by the way. There's zero room for ever telling anyone, do this. I mean, you have the authority perhaps to do it, but that won't be effective. There are times for it. I do get you do make, with an authority, you do need to be able to put out commands for things to happen or get done. It's not quite what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, if you really want to gain buy-in, it won't come through telling. It will come through more of a curiosity. It'll come through saying, let's share our perspectives, and let's find out where it is we can connect on this. It's meaningful to me, and I want to present it to you, but I also want to find out what's meaningful to you. That kind of openness will help someone put their guard down. When their guard's down, that's when some of this can happen. So we can say, no, we don't see this the same, but I think we can start to work on ways that we can make it work for both of us. That's the ultimate goal. So that is the awareness perspective on that topic. As you can see, this one in particular, I didn't say this saying up front, but I like to remind you guys always that my sentence that I like to use is awareness brings change, and then followed by, you can't change what you can't see. So this is another one of those cases where you have a dynamic with generational gaps and authority. These are your two elements that create the challenge. And you can't really properly, I'm trying to think of right, nourish or diagnose or correct or enhance that relationship in that process without making sure first you can see the dynamics within the process. And it's unlikely that any one given person is already aware of everything, especially of the other person's perspective. And part of the problem may be that when you think if either side thinks they know what the other one's thinking, it's usually a recipe for bumping heads, friction. Again, bringing in curiosity. No, I won't make any presumptions. I'm showing up open here. Let's find out what works for each other. Let's find out what our different perspectives are. Maybe they are more the same than we know. We'll find out if we're open about it. So that's it. I'll leave it at there today. I also want to remind you that I do take on personal clients, professional clients in my vocation for career coaching and consultation. So do know that that's something you can come to me for. Just contact me and I will set up a free consultation for you to find out if we have a fit. And this has been Career Talk with Wes, a show about all things career from the perspective of building awareness. Awareness brings change, and you can't change what you can't see. Looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye now.